Hello, hello. This is Irene with SaugaTalks. Thank you for joining in. Thank you. I'm Irene, speaking with fascinating people in tech. And today is my fabulous guest with me here, Prashant Southekal. Prashant, how are you?
Good, Irene. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure and it's a honor to be in your show. Looking forward to the conversation, and hopefully, you and your stakeholders or your audience would benefit from this conversation. Yeah.
Fantastic. We wanted to narrow the huge conversations that happening right now about data, AI, how one is influencing another and how everything is bringing, business outcomes. My question to you, and today the topic that we're gonna discuss in detail, okay, garbage in, garbage out. That simple principle been around for a long time now, right?
Yeah.
But it has different meaning. It has
Hmm.
different meaning in the age of AI. Could you please enlighten us? What are these hidden saboteurs, in businesses, in technology that actually hurting approaches and hurting results because of not putting the right accents on the data?
Yeah. So that's a great starting point. So to step back, you know, businesses or enterprises uh, capture or originate and capture data for three main reasons. Overall, the first one is to run their business operations. Number two is for compliance, and the third one, which you just discussed, is about performance management using analytics and AI. However, the origination and capture of data rarely happens from an analytics and AI perspective. It happens from an operations and compliance perspective. For example, let's say there is a purchase order. Why does a company issue a purchase order to a vendor? It's because I want to operate my company. I want 100 quantities of this bearing to be delivered on this day at this location at this time for this price and so on. So I create a purchase order because I don't make the bearings, but I need the bearings to run my compressor, pumps, and so on and so forth. So you issue the purchase order to the vendor. So that purchase order, remember, it's an operational document because I need to operate my business to make money. But let's assume for a minute that something goes wrong between the company and the vendor. So what is the reference document? It's again the purchase order where they refer to the prices, the payment terms, and all those things and resolve that dispute. So the same purchase order, which was initially an operational document, has become a compliance document as well. So that's how companies are capable. That's why companies need data to originate and to capture their business operations and all those things. But one purchase order itself will not give you any insights. So you need a critical mass of purchase orders to look at patterns and to glean the insights so that you can improve your performance. For example, let's assume that I'm given 100 purchase orders to 10 different vendors to supply the same component bearing. Then I look at the patterns. Oh my gosh, here I see the more quantity I order, the unit price of the bearing is actually decreasing. Then what I can do, I can have a better negotiation, I can rationalize my supplier network and all those things. So operations and compliance will feed into analytics and AI. So rarely you said, oh, I want to derive insights because your initial objective was to operate the business. And from that, there was a compliance activity which was tied to operations, and you use the data to run and operate to comply with your mandates as well as to operate your business. So analytics and AI is the byproduct of of operations and compliance. Now, can you take the data which you initially captured for operations and compliance and use it for analytics and AI? Maybe, may not be. In most cases, it is not possible. It's just like you take a crude oil. Just because you have crude oil doesn't mean that you can power your Toyota Corolla. The crude oil has to be refined so that you can run your Toyota Corolla. So the raw data or the raw crude has to be refined and made it into a finished product so that you can run your Toyota Corolla car. The same thing can happen to data management as well. Just because you have raw data which was captured for operations and compliance doesn't mean that you are ready for analytics. That raw data has to be processed. So in the world of analytics and AI, the raw data, which was originally for operations and compliance, can be, for lack of a better word, we can call it as garbage, because that's garbage for analytics. It might be really good for operations and compliance, good, but that's garbage for analytics. I need to refine it so that I can use it for my analytics. So what is that refinement? So it's basically taking the unstructured data like your text data, audio, video, images, putting a structure around it. It is used to create the right variable so that you can define the models, which is my dependent model variable, which is my independent variable, and all those things. Creating the label. So overall, just because you have petabytes and petabytes of data doesn't mean that you're ready for analytics. Just because you have millions of barrels of crude oil in the earth doesn't mean that you can run your car and trucks. You need to pull the oil from the ground, refine it, and then use it for powering your cars and automobiles and jet and aircrafts and everything. The same thing happens in the world of data management. So the garbage which you talk is great for operations and compliance, but it is really a garbage for me in most cases for analytics and AI unless I refine it, unless I standardize it, I format it, I process it, I structure it so that I can use it for my analytics and AI. So that's my definition of.
I love the analogy. I love the analogy, really. It sticks with you. Wonderful. I know you're a book author. Okay. No wonder you have the ways to put complex terms into the simple, the understandable terms. That's great. That's great. Can we start maybe unpeeling? We're not going to do the whole work, of course, in 30 minutes. But the whole point is, yes, now we realize that garbage is basically, it's the data that's not ready for your analytics and AI engines. And got it. I'm convinced now, right, what leaders should think about, when they approach the data, because we know how many legacy applications out there in mid-sized to large companies, right? We know the amount of data they're all collecting for no reason. You mentioned operation compliance for sure. Customers, right? Don't forget customer service, right? All that data, right? So could you please start unpeeling some of the layers that people can start thinking a little more productive instead of just being overwhelmed by what's happening?
So that's a great point. The first thing is, some of the misconceptions or the myths associated with data quality for AI. The first myth is it's data quality or getting data quality, there is more value if you are proactive than if you are reactive. So in my book on data quality, which is behind, I use the rule called 1-10-100 data quality rule. So what does this mean? If you are proactive and if the person working on the data is able to fix the data himself, that's going to cost 1x the cost. For some reason, I miss it and my colleague is able to fix it, so that's going to cost 10x the amount, but it's within the company. But if both of us miss it and the customer catches it, so that means there is 100x the cost. So that's what I call it as 1-10-100 data quality rule. So that means for the companies, there is an option. Either you can be proactive and train people like me so that I'm getting the better tools, governance, and everything, so that the company spends 1x the cost, or else you be reactive and ready to spend 100x the cost. So overall, the first principle of data management is always try to be proactive. That's number one. Number two, there is nothing called 100% data quality. So many people think that data quality means 100 and 0. So the cost required to acquire 100% data quality is going to be tremendous. So you need to understand your business. Do you really need to have 100% data quality? Are those use cases tied to this? Who knows? Sometimes 80% of data quality is good enough to run my operations. So there are only a few cases where question of life and death is involved, where I need 100% data quality. Rest of it, I'm good enough with 75%, 80% data quality. So I accept the fact that 100% data quality is kind of theoretical in nature. It's going to be extremely hard, even if you have the time and resources. And on top of it, all said and done, data is a reflection of the past, and business is an evolving entity. Data is always doing a catch up on how the business is responding. So there is always a lag associated with data capture. Even if you say, I want 100% data quality, you will not get it, because it's physically and biologically impossible to capture and do something about the future. Like, for example, if somebody were to ask me what is going to be the revenue of my company in 2027, it's going to be very difficult because there is inflation, there is employment, there is macroeconomic factors, and all those things for which I don't have data at all today, right? I need to make some assumptions. So that means it's all probabilistic in nature. So anything to do with predictive analytics or future is going to be probabilistic in nature. So the whole discussion about having this 100% data quality is kind of theoretical in nature. So accept the fact that you are good enough, only a few cases. I'm not disputing that you don't need at all, but what I'm challenging business leaders is, look at those use cases where you need 100% data quality. Do you really need them? So in most of the cases, in my experience, 80%, 85% is good enough to run your analytics and AI models, given that most of the time analytics and AI is about the future. And there is some kind of assumptions, there's some kind of probability, there's kind of stochastic elements that you need to consider to make it happen. So that would be the two major things which I would advise my clients. Now, coming back to your question, Irene, what is the solution? How to make it happen? The first thing is accept the fact that there is a problem. So in many places where I go, people don't want to talk about the problem. So the first thing is accept the fact that you have a data quality issue, and because of poor data quality issues, you are the three things which I mentioned earlier: operations, compliance, and analytics stroke AI. They are getting jeopardized. They are getting affected. So accept the fact that there is a data quality issue. Now, once you are done with accepting the problem, like for example, if you talk about health, for instance, the first thing is I need to go to the doctor and get my test report done because I accept the fact that I want to improve my health. So the same thing happens in the enterprises as well. The enterprises have to accept the reality that they want to improve. If they don't want to improve through there, then there is no point in having this discussion about AI and analytics and everything. It's a mute point. So the first thing is a little bit philosophical. It's about accepting the fact. Then the thing is, what is it you need to do to make it happen? So in my experience, what I have seen is 5 major things to make it happen, or rather 4. The first one is data literacy. You need to have the right skills and capabilities in the people who would be using data and analytics who would be using data for analytics and AI. So that would be number 1. Next, number 2 is the kind of systems and processes which you have to capture data across the entire data life cycle, right? From capturing, integrating, analyzing, and making decisions out of this through the whole process. So that would be number 2. And probably number 3 would be the governance part of it. So make sure that you have the right controls in place so that you can govern the data, because there is some study which is there, which I've reported in my book. If there is no data governance, the data quality degrades by 7% every month. So that would be number 3, which is about the governance. And lastly, about the technologies. Make sure that you have the right tools in place so that you can work this. And lastly, the first thing, in fact, the first point should be about the senior management support and the purpose, whether the management is supporting your initiative and there is a strong business case for this. So these are the probably the 5 things which I would say to get good quality data for analytics and AI. Number 1, senior management support with a strong purpose. Number 2, the data literacy. Number 3, strong tools and technologies. And number 4 is governance.
Fantastic, fantastic. Lots of people looking right now at LLMs, Gen AI, right, in the realm of data and garbage in, garbage out. Okay. I know there are lots of companies, small and big, experimenting around, looking for Gen AI to save their place on earth, okay, by just applying LLMs to improve data quality, feeding the documents, getting some kind of shortcuts. How about that, right? What's your take on it? Because lots of buzz about it. All right, it's probably senior professionals will dismiss it at first, but guess what? So many people dismiss telephone and television at the beginning and electricity that we can't even discuss it now. So, what's your take on again using LLMs for the purpose of data quality?
Yeah, so when we talk about LLMs, just like the building blocks of LLMs is basically three major things. The first one is conditional probability because it's all probabilistic in nature. For example, if I were to ask in LLMs what is the capital of France, for example, so LLM would look at all the training data which is there, and it gives a probability, and based on the data, it says that 90% of the responses I have say it's Paris, so I'm going to give the response as Paris, for example. So now first one is about conditional probability because it's all worked on text data and it looks at probabilities. That's number one. Next, number two, it also works on you also need to, especially in the internal thing, you also need to have some augmentation of the data so that the training data which is there is more robust as well. So these are, I think, the building blocks or the understanding people need to have for LLMs and generative AI and everything. So, but at the same time, on the implementation of it, they say, which we have heard this many times, a fool with the tool is still a fool, for example. So, one thing is the LLM has kind of democratized the insight generation, which is great. But at the same time, what has happened is that communicating the insights and the trust, for example, has becoming more challenging. Like, for example, let's assume that we have two people, Jim and Mike. They both go to the board meeting, and the board asked Mike, what's the sales next year? Mike says $400 million, and Jim says, Jim, what's your number? What's your take? He says $360 million. Okay, so Mike, where did you get that number? He says, I got it in ChatGPT. Jim, where did you get $360 million? I did some regression models. I took the data from my SAP ERP, looked at all the sales, and then I augmented it from some kind of industry reports, and then I made this conclusion that we are going to get $360 million. Whom will the board trust, Mike or Jim? Of course, it's going to be Jim because he knows what he's talking. He knows where he collected the data from. Is the data from a trustworthy source or anything? So just because you have a tool doesn't mean that Mike is better. By the way, when I talk about Mike and Jim, I'm talking about the two characters in the Netflix series Office.
Sure, sure. Always good. Yep. Memorable. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Examples. Yep.
So overall, Irene, just because you have insights doesn't mean that you can take those insights and make decisions and get alignment with the stakeholders. So insights are great, but at the same time, democratization of insight. Just because you have a tool doesn't mean that you get performance. You need tools plus capabilities. You need to know how to tell a story. You need to tell you need to bring all the stakeholders together. You need to talk about the insights and associate with impact of that insight to business performance. So all those things you still require humans to make it, at least for now. Things might change. I never know. You never know. But for now, just because you have insight doesn't mean that you will get results from analytics and AI.
Understood. Understood. Okay. So we came to this segment of the show where please bring us some shiny examples. Okay. We want good news. We all want kind of good projects that went fine, that actually data quality corresponded to the goals, to mission and ambition of the leaders, right? And where they saw results with AI, without AI. Could you just please share example maybe from your biography, from your experience,
Yeah,
without
yeah,
naming any details
yeah.
you don't want to?
Sure. So, but so far in my career for almost 30 years, I've consulted for over 100 different consulting companies, some very big logos, some very small logos. Whether it's a big companies or the small companies, the fundamental question they have when they have engaged me is the same. How do we get value out of data and analytics and AI? The size, complexity, and scale might change, but the fundamental question the big companies and the small companies having is the same. So I'll talk about two situations which you asked. The most successful ones are the some things which are more challenged. In fact, I don't call it as failure. I call it as learning. One is winning, other is learning. So I see it in that way. So if you look at the companies which have done well, the successful ones in my experience are the ones where there is strong senior management support. The management knows that we need to be behind the team. That's number one. Next, number two, there is a strong use cases. That means there is a kind of impact about why we are doing this project. So just to give you an example, there's a logistic company which I worked in Seattle, and the team was very clear. We want to say how we can improve the margins and how data analytics can help us. So in that case, it was very clear for us that everything we do, it's on the customer, it's on the product, it's on pricing. So the use cases which we are building were very specific to that kind of domains which affects that growth or profitability. So that would be number two. Number three is about a strong system of record so that we know this is the place to go and get the data. Say, for example, if there are 100 different definitions of a customer in 10 different systems, then it becomes very difficult for us to capture the right entity, for example. So the most of the companies which have done well are having a system of record. Let's say I work for a big CPG company which is based in the US, and I worked in Europe division. And one of the things they had was a consistent master data management, master data records for the critical elements, customers, vendors, GL accounts, and everything. So there is a strong system and a strong process as well, which is governance. That would be number three. And number four, which I said earlier, is about the skills. People know how to use those skills. Just because you have data doesn't mean that you will get performance. Like, for example, I've said if you give diamond to a monkey, for example, it's you never know what the monkey is going to do with the diamond. It has to be given to the right person as well. So you have good quality data, but it has to be given in the right hands. Because if untrained or unqualified people use the data, it can quickly become into a liability, which can become very hard to manage as well. So the successful companies, which I've said, are the ones which have strong management support, good use cases, strong technology and governance processes, and lastly, good people with the right skills and capabilities to use it. So that's what I would say would be the successful companies. The ones which are still learning, which are still figuring out, they are the ones which are kind of decentralized. Of course, it's a vice versa of what I said, the four elements. But to say that on the other side, it would be some organizations which are kind of decentralized. So that means they have multiple tools to do the same thing. So that's number one. So that's affecting their kind of a data model, inconsistent data definitions, lack of standards and everything. So, and ultimately affecting poor data quality. The people think that technology in those companies, the technology is the one which is going to solve the problem. True, technology can solve the problem, but if you have taken care of the other elements as well, which is a strong purpose, strong leadership, strong governance, and of course, technology as well. So technology alone will not solve the problems. The ones which are struggling, they think that technology will solve the problem. So they keep on changing technology. They will go from one to another, hoping that at some point in time, they'll find that silver bullet from the technology perspective. So that's the other thing which I have seen. And the last one is about varied skill levels in the organization. There are a couple of people who are really good. Some people are struggling to use data and analytics. So the skill levels are also a big challenge in those companies which are struggling to use data for improved business performance through analytics and AI.
Some disaster examples, Prashant, please. Okay, something meaty that people remember. We all focus on negative somehow more than positives, all right? And
Yeah.
people do remember other lessons, I guess, if we put it in the right way. So, any examples that comes to your mind?
Yeah, so the other thing which I would say, to build on what I just said earlier, you don't have to try to boil the ocean with data analytics initiative. So I tell my clients, think big, start small, go fast. So look at create a matrix with kind of impact and complexity, and create a 9 blocker which has got something low, medium, high on the impact, and low, medium, high on the complexity, and create the 9 blocker one, and pick the one which has high impact and low complexity. That would be the low hanging fruit. Pick that use case so that you build the trust. You show the world, you show your stakeholders that you are able to do something, rather than talking about something which is very shiny or something which is highly complex and low impact, those kind of things, just because it's somebody else's baby and those kind of things. So what I say is, collect all the requirements which you have, and create a matrix, a 9 blocker matrix on impact and complexity, and pick the one which is a low hanging fruit, which is the high in impact and low in complexity. Then once you build that initial success, then you build more credibility in the organization. Then you can go forward with phase 2, phase 3, or tranche 2, tranche 3, so on and so forth.
Beautiful. That sounds easy. You make it sound easy, right? All logical. I don't think we'll get huge arguments, in the room of people, who is day and night, working on the things. What about some meatier practices? Okay, something that people can address, most commonly overseen, kind of overlooked, okay, issues in organizations, because we're all kind of ambitious. Okay, leaders do not admit, like you said, people do not admit they have a problem in a lot of cases, right? So common places where people don't look, and yet there's hidden treasures there if they do.
Yeah, so that's a great comment, Irene. I just want to tell one thing about your comment, which is very enlightening or very interesting. The data problems which you see in analytics and AI are often, you don't see them immediately. It builds over a period of time. Like, for example, if you just by, say, for example, if one day you don't exercise and one day you don't eat good food, one day you don't sleep well, it's not going to affect your career or health very much. But if you keep doing the same thing over months and months and months, then your health becomes disaster, right? Then it's very difficult to get back to where you are with good health, right? So same thing happens with data quality. It doesn't happen overnight. One day you end up and saying, oh, I have poor data quality. It's a process, and many companies struggle to accept that it is a process. They think it is a project. We do it and we are done, kind of thing. So the first thing, to your point, which I like it, is about accepting that the data quality is a process. As long as the company is there, you do data quality initiatives. So that's number one. Now coming back to something what meteor companies can take. So I have something called as a Rumsfeld matrix, which you must have heard about, this known, known, unknown, known, known, unknown, and all those things. So if you remember that 4 quadrants in that matrix, the first quadrant has known problem. That means data knows something, you also know something. So there's no point in doing that kind of project. It's got very little value. So let me tell you one example where I did for a pipeline company. So in that company, we were doing analytics for 3-4 months, and the data science team there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of discussion and everything, and the management was a little bit worried. What are these people doing? And they called us, and I was part of the lead architect, and they asked the data science team, tell me one insight which you have derived in this last 4 months. There's been a lot of budgets we have spent. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of meetings, everything. So what have you done? So they said, if the viscosity of the crude oil goes up, the time it takes for the oil to move from A to B also goes up. For a minute, we were all like stunned. Isn't it common sense? Do you need 4 months to do that kind of project? So if you know something and if data also knows something, there is no point in doing analytics. It's a very low use case or an impact. So that's common sense. So if you are spending 6 months to come up with these kind of insights, it's okay, but there is not really value. But the real value comes when you derive insights. I'll give you one more example of a CPG company where I worked. So we worked at their almost like 2,000 SKUs they had, and we said, if you increase the price by 1% of the 20 SKUs you have, your gross profit will go by 8.2%. So this was like mind-blowing for the board and for the management. Oh my gosh, I have 2,000 SKUs, but I just have to worry about 20 SKUs and increase the price by just 1%. Because we have heard about the Pareto rule, right? Like 80% of the business comes from 20% of the SKUs. So in this case, these were 20 SKUs were basically the cash cows for this company. So what we told was increase the price by 1%. Probably the clients will not even realize that you have increased by 1%, but your profit goes up by 8%. So this is the kind of insights companies are looking for, not just validating something which they already know, the pipeline example which I said. Then third type is something like challenging the assumptions. You believe that price elasticity of demand for this product is highly inelastic, but your data comes up and challenges that and say, hey, no, that's not true. This is what the real situation is. So that would be the third case. And the last one, which I call it as, for lack of a better word, is the black swan kind of events, like asking somebody to predict COVID, for example, or asking the data science team to come up with the strategy for 2050. I know a bank I know a logistic company or a utilities company which was working on a strategy for 2050. But trust me, tell me now. We are living in a VUCA world, a very volatile and uncertain world. We don't even know what's going to happen next month. What is the point in doing analytics for 2050, right? So those kind of things. So overall, when we talk about this use cases, pick the one which is insight centric, or pick the ones which are going to challenge your assumptions within the company.
Fantastic. Prashant, time is flying in good company. Okay, you made such a great analogy that I do hope will stay in our audience's mind when they go to work, when they approach a new project. I encourage everyone to follow Prashant absolutely on LinkedIn. Prashant, where are you? I mean, I know you're doing a lot of work, so where should people visit you?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is through LinkedIn. So look for Prashant Southekal and send me a connection request. I'm pretty active in LinkedIn. I share my thoughts regularly, both on data and analytics and life in general, because my goal is to for me and for people around me, be a better version of themselves and even myself than I was today. So that's my objective. That's why I want everybody around me to challenge themselves and expand their boundaries and be a better version of themselves every day. So that's what I look for, and that's where I share my thoughts, not just on data analytics and technology, but also, which I call it as D2A2, digital data analytics and AI. So in fact, you can also follow D2A2.ai in LinkedIn and share our thoughts as well, and where we share our thoughts. And once we are connected in LinkedIn, we can go forward from there. If you have any questions, you can directly message me and all those things. I'm based in Calgary, Canada, so pretty much I work out of here, but 2 months in a year I teach out of Madrid in Spain. So generally in spring and in winter I'm in Madrid, Spain. But it doesn't matter where I am physically, whether in Calgary or Madrid. The best way to reach is through LinkedIn.
Fabulous, fabulous. Prashant, as the key takeaways, okay, in conclusion, that people will remember this conversation by maybe 3 major points, or just single most important action that company can take today to ensure that their AI and data quality actually, go together, not, the huge gap between them.
Okay, so 3 takeaways would be: number 1 is think big, start small, go fast. So that's one thing. It's the data quality or the data management is a huge problem to solve. So you don't have to, you can't you can't eat an elephant in one bite. So it has to be in small chunks. So you see the response, you see how the change is happening and everything. So that would be number 1, to craft your solution. Next, number 2, and that's why I supported with all the Rumsfeld metrics, the complexity, impact, 9 blocker, and all those things, supporting tools to make it happen. Which one to pick? The second one is about the building blocks to get good quality data. The first one is the purpose. You need to have a right business case supported with the senior management. That's number 1. Next, number 2, you need to have the right technology and the processes to support this initiative as well. That's number 2. Number 3 is governance. And lastly, or most importantly, is the data literacy part of it. That would be number 4. So the 4 key elements to have good quality data for analytics and AI, it would be these four elements. And lastly, I would say that for all these initiatives, there is one entity which just comes in the middle. Everything you need to do, you need to question that one. But is it going to impact this particular entity? Is going to make life better for this person, for this entity? And that entity is the customer. If there is no customer, there is no business, there is no analytics, there is no AI. So keep your customer in the middle of everything you do. So it's all great to talk about analytics, AI, data quality, the stakeholder engagement, training, and all those things, but all for customer.
Prashant, I appreciate it so much. We've had fantastic conversation. Please come back to SaugaTalks with updates, with new techniques, with new experiences. Frankly, appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. Thanks again for the opportunity and looking forward to collaborate more with you in the future.
Absolutely.